Hi, everybody. Jason Smith here. Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Truth About Social Ads. I'm an agency owner specializing in Facebook and Instagram ads, and I have dedicated my professional life to helping you learn what others won't tell you about Facebook ads. You know, I believe there's so much information that no one is sharing about Facebook ads and how you can fail and win running ads for your business and when it's time to hire an agency. That's why I'm here bringing ideas and information that can help you run successful Facebook and Instagram ads. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to The Truth About Social Ads, and I'm super excited for today's episode. I have somebody on the show today that we're going to interview that really helped me get my Facebook ad agency off the ground. I'm super grateful for everything that he did for me and continues to do for me, actually. But really, in the beginning, he was an integral part of my agency getting started. And I'd like to welcome Deacon Bradley to the show. Deacon, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And so Deacon, gosh, him and I, we've known each other for a few years now, but so Deacon currently is the VP of operations at Tier 11, which is a full service Facebook ad agency. And Deacon, correct me if I'm wrong, if I can say full service or how you want me to say it.
Yeah, we call it full service because that's what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's funny because on some levels, I guess we're competitors, but you know, we're not really competitors because we're all friends. And you know,
when there's this much demand, there's not as big a deal with competitors.
Exactly. So Deacon has been in the Facebook ad agency fame for a long time. He was the founder originally of his own agency called Funnel Owl, which later merged with Ralph Burns. And we talked about Ralph, and we're actually going to have Ralph on one of the episodes here shortly. And merged and became Tier 11. And Deacon is the VP operations at Tier 11. And what he does there is he helped basically scale and become one of Inc.'s 5,000 fastest growing companies. So that's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah, I honestly can't believe it when I look back, when you're like, hey, jot down a quick bio. I'm all, yeah, I met Jason last year. And no, wait,
yeah.
A lot's happened, I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy to think how you've kind of evolved since then, right? And us too as an agency and just as a person. And I'm really just thankful that we've kept a good relationship, because I know sometimes in business, especially when, like agencies, and again, we're not really competitors because you guys are definitely a lot higher level than we are, but we do the same thing, right? Like we run Facebook ads for businesses, and I've seen it. Even talking to other agency owners, but you guys are just awesome, man. You and Ralph are just total open book, and I've been able to come to you at any time, and I appreciate that. And that's actually what I want to talk about on the show, is how grateful I am to Deacon and Ralph and everybody at Tier 11 really for helping me start my journey and continue my journey in the Facebook ad world as an agency owner. And one thing I love about, Tier 11's slogan is, what you wrote, Deacon, when I had you kind of fill everything out for the show, was grow your business faster than you could on your own with Facebook and Instagram ads. That's awesome. That's exactly what you guys do, right?
Absolutely. That's what we're passionate about as a team and as a business. It also happens to be, I guess, if I dig down into like, what is my purpose? What am I all about? It's maximizing things. And so just at a personal level, and I think this is for everybody that we've hired and brought onto our team, all feels the same way. It's like, we just love helping things grow. And it frustrates us when they're not reaching their full potential. And you can grow businesses in a number of different ways. You don't have to just use Facebook and Instagram ads. That happens to be where we're good. So that's exactly how we love to bring our talent to the world.
Yeah. And isn't it cool to see like a business that comes to you who's struggling with like Facebook and Instagram ads, or struggling as a business in general, and you just take them from mediocre to just awesome? Isn't that like the best feeling in the world, to be able to help a business do that? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we like to hang our hats on at Tier 11 is that our customers work with us for a long time, like
Yep.
years. And that's kind of unheard of in our niche for the most
Yes.
part. Like, especially these customers are coming in, we kind of find out about their journey. And a lot of times it was a painful journey. But,
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
but
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we hear as an agency commonly is like, oh, the last agency I worked with and the last agency I worked with. And I'm like, well, I really did learn that from you guys. Being a great agency can be definitely attainable, and you can work with clients for years and years. And to tell you the truth, I still work with one of the original clients that you referred to me.
no
you
way.
know, yeah, which is crazy. And what I want to do on the podcast today is just kind of continue my first episode of my journey and kind of how things got started, because I really do think things are crazy, right? Like, so I want to get into how you and I met, why I think it's important for the podcast and for people to know about it, because what I don't hear a lot on podcasts is hosts or people in general coming on and just thanking other people for where they're at today. You know what I mean? Like that's not a common
Yeah,
thread.
or they don't talk about the thing that was
Right,
like, there are a few touchstones I can look back on and be like, that made a big difference. And
right.
here's the reason I think you don't hear them talk about it a lot. It's not the program that I'm going to pitch you at the end. Like,
Yep.
kidding, I don't have anything to sell you, but
Yeah.
so often I think people align their story with the thing that the program they're kind of hurting you into.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And really what the podcast that you guys host, Perpetual Traffic, is the same way. It's all about like, and I want ours to be the same way too. It's all about great information, talking about stuff that no one else is really talking about in our niche, in our industry. But not only that, but like talking about real life relationships, because I think that's important, you know?
Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, cool. So, how long has it been? So, we went, how Deacon and I met was kind of crazy. And I did touch on my first episode if you listened. And I went to a certification program where I thought I was in the complete wrong place. I really didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. Right. And Deacon was kind of one of the first guys that I met when I went. And we chatted and we talked and stuff. But gosh, Deacon, it's been how many years since that certification that we both went to? And mind you, Deacon was not with Tier 11 at the time. He was a guy, well, not like me. He had his own successful agency already. And he was going there to learn more about ads and how to be more successful in agency level. But we were in two different places in the world at the time, right? Like coming from the streets of Los Angeles as a policeman to Austin, Texas, to a 5 or 6 day intensive training about Facebook. I mean, talk about a 360-degree turn right there for me, right?
Yeah.
But then you also, and you evolved from there. So how long has it been? Let's see, when was that certification? It was,
I want to say 20. Oh gosh, this is hard off the top of my head. I want to say it's been like 4, maybe 5 years.
yeah, 4 or
Maybe
5
4.
years. Yeah. And again, like when we went in there, I had no clue what I was getting myself into. And I talked on the first episode, Deacon, about how everybody else was like going to happy hour and having drinks. And I like literally went home and just like stayed up till, and you may not even know this, but I stayed up till like 3 a.m. studying that huge book that they gave us the first day. Right.
Yeah, it was
And,
like a 200-page, like printed out gigantic thing they handed us when we got there.
right. Yeah. And I thought it was funny too, because I was like the only one when I walked in the certification that didn't have a name tag. And I'm like, oh, I'm for sure in the wrong place. You know what I mean? But what was cool about it was, I think I really, and I touched on this in the podcast, the first episode, like I really got into it. Like the second day is kind of where I was like, okay. And I remember talking to you, and again, you may not even remember this, but I had a discussion with you really briefly and really quickly about, and you didn't tell me your exact monthly income, but you're like, yeah, make pretty good money. And that's what really made me think about, okay, and you work from home, you get to spend time with your family, like all that stuff I didn't have, right? I was always worried about money. I was always worried about living paycheck to paycheck at the time and never home, never saw my family. And that's one of the things that drew me to become an agency owner. And gosh, it was a crazy time. And then just seeing like, Molly Pittman there and Ralph and, all those guys is just very intimidating for me. And now to think that we're all kind of friends, it's just kind of mind blowing, So
I know. What a journey, right?
I know it's super crazy. So what I want to touch on, and the whole reason for this podcast is what I want to get into next. And, I went into that certification super naive, didn't really know what I wanted, and left with like a total changed attitude and like a mission, like, okay, like this is what I want to do. And I'm sure Deacon, you've noticed me over the years how I am, but like I'm a total action taker. Like I jump in with both feet, I give it my all, and I want to make sure that I get the best results for my clients. But you know what, Deacon, why don't you talk first about like the certification, why you went, where you were at, and your agency journey there, and then we can kind of go on to the next phase of what I want to talk about and kind of the whole purpose of the podcast today.
Yeah, I remember that certification. I knew that they were doing a webinar to pitch something, and I went to the webinar, and I knew that I wasn't going to buy whatever they were selling. Like I went in with that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out behind the scenes later, I was actually the first person that bought before the webinar was over. Wow. And the reason was because I found out on this webinar that Ralph was hosting this event, and he was going to be kind of opening the doors about how they run their agency. I had a small agency at the time. I was, I think, getting ready to hire my first employee. And I knew that Ralph had a bunch of employees and had done all these things that I wanted to do. And part of it, I think we got to go to Facebook and actually go in there, which nobody gets to do. And so just hearing that offer, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, and by the way, I live in Austin where the event was. And I just thought, like, I'm an idiot if I don't go to this thing that's in my own town. And I went to it with the whole mission of, I want Ralph Burns to know who I am. And he laughs every time I say that now, but
that's so
it
funny.
worked. He knows who I am now.
A little bit, right? Yeah. and we'll get into that too, but yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
So yeah, I went to that event, but that was essentially what I wanted to get out of it was connections with people like Ralph and Molly, and Ryan Dice was at that one. That was incredible. Yeah. And so I knew that relationships actually build businesses, especially in the early stages. And so I went mainly for that. And the Facebook ads information there was incredible. Still use it to this day. But I knew that I could learn that in a course or other places. But what I could never replicate was the people that would be there. And Jason, you talked about like you being a action taker. Like that is so obvious, because who else as a policeman in Los Angeles would sign up to go to a 5-day intensive and just like go, like talk about jumping in with both feet, man.
Yeah. And, it was crazy. And I had my doubts and, and obviously like, paying the flight down there and then the hotel. And like, I didn't stay in a hotel, to be exact. I stayed in a like $40 a night Airbnb because I couldn't afford a hotel at the time, So I just want to talk about that too. And then at the time you owned your own agency, Funnel Owl, right? Mm-hmm. And how was that going at the time? You did talk a little bit about like you were going to hire an employee. So you were a Facebook ad agency, just like what you're doing now, for Tier 11. Just talk briefly about like maybe how many clients you had and were you thinking about jumping ship at the time to go work for Tier 11? I mean, was that even on the radar?
Absolutely not. So at the time, I was driven to like build my own thing for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned, Jason. I was a little bit farther on my journey, but I had 2 young ones. I used to have to drive downtown to Austin, and I'd get home and they'd already be asleep, and like that crushed me. Yeah. And I knew that I could build my own business way faster than they could fix mass transit. And so I was like, I'm just going to build my own thing and work from home. And so going into that event, I can't remember the number of clients. I want to say my revenue was somewhere in the neighborhood of like between 10 and 20,000 a month. And it fluctuated a lot because I worked with a lot of clients who did kind of launch-based marketing at the time. So
like webinars and stuff like that. Right?
So we'd have that month where they spent a huge amount of money and we made all this business and it was great. And I'd, get a big invoice from that. And then the next month it'd be like, we're good. we're
Yeah.
we're not doing anything for a couple months. Like, didn't you see
Right.
the webinar? So that's kind of where I was at the time. And I remember there was this session that they kind of did a little bit on the fly on the last day of the certification. And Ralph kind of gathered everyone in the room and was all, hey, listen, I want to talk to you guys about potentially working with us as
Yes.
an agency, like as a media buyer. And that session was packed. And
Yep.
I very clearly remember where my head was at the time because I didn't even go. I was like out in the hall talking to a couple other guys. I was like, I'm a tech nerd. And so I was
Yeah.
talking to all the guys about how they were recording this and how they were streaming stuff and like checking out their gear. And so I didn't even attend the session. So it was nowhere on my radar to ever go and work with Ralph.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then how long after the certification did you actually start, or did Ralph approach you and you started thinking about going over to tier 11? Like, how long was that? Do you remember?
It was really fast, which is funny to say after that last thing I just said, no intention of it. So that
Right.
ended. It's very easy for me to remember the dates around this time because at the end of the certification, at the end of the last day, you remember where we went?
Yes, we went to a house for a Super Bowl party, right?
Yes. And
Yes.
that Super Bowl, after I just said it's really easy, I'm probably going to
Oh,
blank on the
yeah.
recording. It was New England. It was the one where they played Atlanta. And
Yes.
they were, and we're all like big New England fans. Ralph's from Boston, and so everyone was like kind of rooting for him,
Yeah.
rooting for New England, like to be friends with Ralph. And they're just getting stomped, right? And then and then Atlanta blew it in the second half. So it's very easy
Yeah.
to remember the dates. So like that was end of February, and then my youngest son was born on March 7th, and it was like 2 weeks after that. I remember he was 2 weeks old. I flew up to Boston to meet with Ralph about potentially working together. So it all changed really fast. And yeah, it was a surprise turn for me as well.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned earlier about you went there to get to know Ralph and stuff, but to build relationships, right? So if you would have never have gone to the certification, you wouldn't be probably where you're at today with tier 11, right? Because
No way. I'd be another guy on their webinars
you'd be someone like me, probably, right? Like an agency owner still trying to, chug along here and make some money and become a successful agency. So yeah, and it's crazy because shortly after, I remember this really vividly, right after the certification, and I don't, it's kind of funny because you and I, again, we're from like two different worlds, but we just kind of connected, and then you had reached out to me in Facebook Messenger, said, hey, Jason, I have a couple clients that I think would maybe be good for you if you want to maybe take them on. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, really? Like, you know what I mean? And the whole point of this episode is that right there, right? Is the fact that, we both went to the certification, again, kind of like with you and Ralph in tier 11. Like if I would have never have gone to the certification and took that leap, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. Well, I know I wouldn't be, right? Because you reached out to me being, you're a great guy, super cool. And like, you didn't have to do that, right? Like I was, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but like I was just kind of a nobody just getting started. And you had, not like a tier 11 type agency at the time, but you had your own agency, you had clients, right? And you were willing to basically give one of those clients to me. But I also went to the certification and you saw that I was putting in practice like what I was learning and stuff, and I was on Upwork trying to get clients and doing all this stuff. And just so you know, and the audience knows, like I will forever be grateful to Deacon because he's probably the reason why I'm here today and we're on a podcast, because he gave me my start. And then of course, I put in the long hours, right? Like I worked my ass off to get where I'm at today. But it wasn't without a ton of help from Deacon and getting me that start. And I know it's funny how things work and how stories work. And when you do things for other people, you don't realize the ripple effect that it has in their life. But, I can honestly say that Deacon was an integral part of where I'm at today. And I will always be grateful to that. And that's why I wanted you on the podcast today, was to tell tell people that, and not really to announce it publicly, because I don't think publicly people need to know, but it's part of my journey as a Facebook ad owner, right? Ad agency owner. Like we're cool with each other. And in this world, even though we're doing the same thing, like we can still refer clients, we can still be cool and work together and learn together. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
100%.
Hey, it's Jason here, taking a quick break. Thank you so much for listening this far. I really appreciate it. You know, I've put together a great resource for you that can help you understand how to set up full funnel campaigns complete with audiences and what audiences to exclude at every step of the way. This could help you figure out which ads to set up, what audiences to use, and how much budget you should allocate to each campaign. This is probably the most common roadblock I hear from people when setting up ads. You can go to truthaboutsocialads.com/ad guide, ADGUIDE, to download your copy. Hope you enjoy it.
So I have my own similar version of that story, Jason, where, I mean, there were people that for whatever reason stepped in and gave me my leg up. And
right.
At the time when I was like, what was kind of going on behind the scenes with me was I had good conversations with Ralph. We figured out that, hey, you know, if we merged, we could get where we were going faster, because our skill sets complement each other really well. And so at the time I had a handful of clients that I was going to bring over, maybe like one or two that were a fit for the Tier 11 brand. But I also had a few that weren't a fit. Yeah. And what drew me to you, Jason, is, like you said, you are an action taker. And it's not like I met you at an event. You know, so we keep saying certification. I guess what I would picture in my mind, if you're listening to this, is like a mastermind environment. So probably 30 people participating there, maybe like 4 or 5 hosts, you know, including the staff and whatnot. Yep. And we were in this hotel room, like meeting room. It wasn't a hotel room, but it was like a hotel meeting space for 8 to 10 hours a day for 4 or 5 days in a row. And then at the end of that, we'd go eat and hang out at the bar and like keep talking about this stuff. Like, it was intense. So we really got to know each other well there. This was not like if you go to traffic and conversion, there's 6,000 people, you shake some guy's hand, you're probably not going to send him clients in a few months. Like, we had a lot of chances to interact there, Jason. And so I'm like, wow, like, gosh, you're going back to your room to study. Like, that's interesting. And there were a million touch points like that over the next couple of months where you're kind of just demonstrating action taking. And to me, like, that's the biggest thing. Anyone that I now that you're kind of telling this story, it's funny to think about, because there's a guy I'm working with right now, not in Facebook ads at all, but I'm kind of helping him get his business going. Mm-hmm. But it's because he takes big, bold action and follows through on stuff. It's easy to kind of show them the next step, because I know they'll take it, and I knew you would take it. And so,
and not only that too, but I think you also knew that, you know, like, I absorbed all the training, and I wanted to implement this training, and I, you know, because I don't think you would have referred them either if you knew I wasn't implementing the training and that I learned there, but that I wouldn't do a good job, right? Because to a certain extent, your reputation was also on the line too, right? And totally. With these clients, and I never wanted them to come back to you and say, "Oh man, like, you referred me to this guy, total idiot, like got me really crappy results." But I didn't. I actually ended up getting those 2 clients that you referred to me, like, phenomenal results, and that catapulted my business. And next thing I knew, a few months later, I had like 10 clients. You know, and I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe this is actually working, right? Like, this is taking off. And at the time, you know, I was broke, you know, like I didn't have any money. I mean, I had a little bit, but, you know.
Were you still an officer?
No, I had just resigned, actually.
When did you quit? Was it before the certification or after, or when?
It was right before the certification. I'd already booked everything, and I had just resigned right before. And what I ended up doing was cashing out of my retirement. So when I say I was broke, I mean, I didn't have an income coming in, but I did have some money from my retirement that I took out. Right. So I was basically living, and that's how I paid for the certification too, you know, because the certification, if you remember, was not cheap. Well, I didn't think it was cheap. I mean, now it's a little bit different what I know now. Right. And, you know, but
if you
at
do
the
an
time,
ROI calculation, it was cheap. But if you're in
right.
your
Yeah,
shoes then, it was expensive.
exactly. Yes. ROI calculations, like later, I'm like, holy crap. I mean, actually, after the first, 2 to 3 months, ROI calculations were like through the roof, you know? But yeah, at the time, and actually I had to make payments on it because I couldn't do one lump sum at the time. And again, like barely could afford the flight to Austin and then the room. I literally slept in a bunk bed in an Airbnb in some little corner of Austin, you know? And it was funny because I remember the host of the Airbnb was like, man, like, it's so crazy. Like, I see you when I go to bed and you're still up, and then you're up before me, still like, what is that book you keep studying? And I was literally like just going over everything.
It's my future.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And little did I know. And then it's also funny too, because little did I know our paths would cross even closer later when, you know, I had a few clients, things were going good, but I was actually at the certification. I was one of the first ones to approach Ralph and said, hey, I want to work for the agency to get a bunch of experience. And he just kind of like said, dude, you have zero experience. You need to get some experience first, then come back, circle back in maybe a few months. And I remember just working my butt off and then coming back to Ralph, and he was like, wait, what? You did what in a couple months? You know what I mean? He was like,
Mhm.
and then, you know, we kind of circled back again when I went to work for Tier 11, probably I'd say 5, maybe 6 months later. And that's where I really gained a lot of awesome experience from everybody there, and kind of took my, you know, my skills as a ads or media buyer to like the next level, and kind of where I really learned how to run high level, good quality Facebook ads, and doing it in not like in an unconventional way too, you know, like Michigan method and all that stuff we learned, you know, like
Mhm.
crazy stuff. And then you and I work very closely there too. And I kind of came in not as really like the ads manager, but more of like an e-commerce guy running, you know, dynamic product ads. And, you know, because I knew a little bit about that at the time and stuff like that. So it was kind of crazy how we started working together really closely. But I also came in, and I don't know if you remember, but I came in knowing that at some point I would probably go my separate ways. And once I got to the point where I thought I was ready. And, you know, man, I sure made a lot of mistakes when I was there too. And that's the funny thing is, yeah, taking action is awesome, but I also made a lot of really critical mistakes, which I learned from and I'll never make again, you know. But that's also important to talk about. Like, we can all talk about the great results, but a lot of learning and a lot of mistakes happened in between all that made me a better person and a better agency owner today. So yeah, kind of crazy, right? And then I would say I was with Tier 11 for probably about a year, and then after that, I left and continued my agency journey, and we're here today. So it's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
what a cool story. Our model at Tier 11 at the time was we worked with a lot of people like you, Jason, who were kind of running some accounts for us, but also had some of their own accounts. And that's just how we did things then. And it was the perfect fit for the scale that our business was at. Since you've moved on, we've kind of transitioned to now it's more like employee type
Yeah,
people who are just here, and they're 100% here. They're not agency owners who also kind of help us on the side.
right.
So
Yeah, yeah.
really,
And how did you guys kind of make that transition? Because you were, I mean, obviously you were smaller then, right? You've grown. I mean, you have a
mhm.
team of 40 now, right? I think.
Yeah, right about there.
Yeah, and so tell me how that transition happened, where you guys went from kind of a very serious high level ad agency, but then honing your own employees, really kind of how you wanted, and going through that training and stuff. Like, how did that all happen? Probably after I left, right? You're like, man, we're not doing
Yeah,
this again, you know?
I do think it was definitely after you left. And one of
Yeah,
the challenges as so overseeing day-to-day operations, part of my role at the time was capacity planning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to plan capacity when you have a team makeup like that,
Right.
because maybe I'm counting on Jason to take an account and then you sign your own account. Like,
Yeah.
now he's not going to run my account. So it was really
Right.
difficult. And it was also a little bit more difficult to build culture because
Yeah.
everybody was kind of their own little entity. And like just the whole thing was really different. And so changing that was really hard, but it all started with the hiring process. And so that was one of the first things that I had to figure out was how do you hire, onboard, and train good media buyers
Yeah.
in like a repeatable way. And the first two people that we hired, we've had an unbelievable success rate. I think we probably retain 80 to 90% of our hires, which is
Sweet.
unheard of. According
Yeah.
to Ralph, he's like, man, if you can hit like 30%, you're doing great.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
we're doing really well there. And like the first two people I hired, I still remember very clearly because they were the first two people I hired at Tier 11, have
Mhm.
both ascended to the director level now and have their own direct reports. And it's been really cool
Wow.
to watch. But all that really came from just like starting people off with that mindset and constructing the whole process to cultivate like that's what I want to get at the end of it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it also says a lot about you guys, not only in business, but about individuals, right? Like I know when I was there, I didn't necessarily I felt like part of the family, I guess you could say, right? Like it was a tight knit group of people, and it says a lot about you guys if you can retain employees like that. I mean, you guys are just good peeps, like that's the bottom line, you know what I mean? And that says a lot about, who you are as people and how you run your business and all that stuff. And it's pretty awesome that I'm still have a little glimpse of that, and you and I talk, I wouldn't say weekly, but like we talk every once in a while, and it's awesome to talk and see what's going on with Tier 11 and then, you personally and stuff. And I'm watching your kid. Like I remember when your son was born, gosh, man, he was tiny, now he's like running around, being a little terror, which is pretty
No
cool.
kidding.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, well, I definitely want to wrap things up, but what I want to get across from this episode is just like, paying it forward when you don't know what the ripple effects are going to be in someone's business. And not only that, like life. What Deacon did for me transformed my life at home, my income, my business, and all because he took a second to make an intro for two clients that took me from zero to basically where I'm at today. And a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears in between all these years, right? But just for you to just make that intro and to give me those clients were life changing for me, and I will always appreciate that. So thank you, I appreciate it.
That's awesome, man. So cool to hear that from the other side.
Yeah, and again, like I'm definitely not the touchy feely type. I'm more of like I will ask, do, and tell, right? But I do think that part of this journey is documenting my journey and how grateful I am the people who believed in me from the start. And I remember I used to send you questions and things, and you would answer. You didn't have to tell me stuff, but you did because you're just a cool dude, and I appreciate that. So
yeah, I think we talked about ClickFunnels a lot back in the
yes,
day.
yes, that this is true. But well, thank you so much for being on. I do want to mention that, Deacon, the people at Tier 11, you guys do have the Perpetual Traffic podcast, which most of you listening here probably already listened to Perpetual Traffic because it's an awesome podcast.
So good.
Yeah. So Deacon, can you just kind of tell us, and then you guys recently launched another podcast. Can you just tell us about that real quick?
We did. We recently launched a podcast called Virtual Business, and you can find that at thevirtualbusinesspodcast.com. And this is one of those things where, Jason, you were kind of talking about our culture and how we built our team. And this has been on our plates for a long time, is how can we tell more people about that? How can, like, we actually teach internally virtual management lessons to our team. we're like, man, we gotta open this up. We gotta tell more people about this stuff because it's made such a big difference. Hearing you, Jason, talk about, hey, now you get to be home. Like that's our vision for the future. We didn't expect it to arrive like this. But it was a good time to get that podcast out there and help more people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I actually listened to it, and it's very useful for my business and everything we do. So if you're interested, please check that podcast out. Can you just tell us the official name of the podcast?
The name is Virtual Business. The website that we could actually buy is thevirtualbusinesspodcast.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, go listen to that. It's super helpful, especially if you're an agency owner, or even a business owner that, if you're not an agency owner, just a business owner, if you run Facebook ads or if you run a virtual business, that podcast could really help you out. So, well, Deacon, I appreciate it. So if anybody would like to get in touch with you at Tier 11 and talk to you more about really high-level Facebook ads, how could they get a hold of you?
Just head on over to tier11.com. That's ELEVEN. And upper right-hand corner, there's a big pink button. Can't miss it. That'll take you right to us.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on. I know you're super busy as an executive over there at Tier 11, and I appreciate you taking a few minutes out to tell our story and our journey. And thank you, everything.
Of course, man.
Appreciate it.
So glad you're sharing your story. It's such a cool one.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks so much for listening to The Truth About Social Ads. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Please visit our website at truthaboutsocialads.com for show notes and additional episodes. And if you have time, please subscribe to the podcast and please consider rating and reviewing the show if you enjoyed it. That will help other people find us. By the way, I would love to hear from you. Please send me an email at jason@spotlightsocialllc.com with your feedback, questions, or a topic you'd like me to talk about on the show. If you send me a question, maybe I'll read it on the show. See you later. Bye.